Welcome to this episode of Trauma Rockstars. I'm so excited to introduce the world to Angie Hawkins. She is an inner glow coach, and you will understand what that means as we get further into this conversation. She has had quite a bit of trauma in her life as well, which has made her to be this glowy, wonderful person. So I love that you are an inner glow coach. And can you just explain to everybody before we go back to the beginning what that actually is?
Yes. So my coaching program, well, first of all, I help high achieving women stop chasing and performing for love and approval and learn to shine from the inside so they can finally feel happy, free, and loved for who they are.
Mhm.
And my current coaching program is called Shine from the Inside because the whole concept is based on the fact that we're all born with this light inside of us. And as we move along life and accumulate trauma, or society has all these rules and standards that we feel like we have to conform to that actually aren't authentic to us. So as we move along life, our light starts to get dimmed and we don't feel happy and fulfilled. And a lot of self-help, I feel, is marketed as you have to fix yourself or change yourself. But really, it's about rekindling your light and coming back home to who you are. Because when you are shining your light and living in that authenticity, and I know that sounds so cliche, but when you are just shining in your own light, you feel happy and fulfilled, and you inspire other people to do the same.
That's so interesting because I think that's true. Like we all have it in us. Like you said, you just help people reignite that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you talk about a child and how carefree they live and how they're so open to the world. And then as we get older, we lose all that because of whatever happens to us. And I love that.
Yeah, and I actually usually use children as an example because you see kids, they are running around, they're screaming, their clothes are dirty, they don't match.
They don't give a
They do
crap.
not give a shit.
No,
Yeah.
no. And they just live carefree and they don't really,
Yeah.
until they start to get a little older, they don't even really care what anybody thinks or says. And
Yes.
then we lose all that in life as we grow. And okay, so I love your story, and I know you're going to touch a lot of this, but start with how you got into this, like where you're at now. Go back to the beginning, because I know, when we had chatted, you had mentioned that, growing up and everything, you've had a lot of tough times, and you even told me that your parents were emotionally unavailable.
Yes. Yeah, I'll start with the beginning, and
Yeah.
I don't go too into my childhood
Mhm.
because and it's not that I don't feel comfortable talking about it, but it's not to criticize my parents because I think the overall theme, because there are a lot of details that I could go into, the overall theme is that they were both emotionally unavailable. And as an adult, I understand what that means because I
Yes.
have the tools to understand what that means, and also
Yeah.
just the maturity and everything that comes along with aging. But as a child, I didn't have those tools to make sense of the situation. So, how I interpreted it was that I didn't deserve to be loved.
Hmm.
So, starting from a very, very young age, I had this inner belief that I didn't deserve to be loved. So, as you are aware, and many other people are aware, your beliefs dictate your behaviors, which dictate your circumstances. So, needless to say, life was a struggle for a long time because I was a people pleaser. I was the one who was chasing and performing for basically love and approval and everything outside of myself. I didn't even know what I wanted or needed because I was so concerned with what other people wanted and needed, and I would shape shift to do anything for anyone outside of myself. And it's extremely exhausting to live that way. I was super unhappy and unfulfilled, but I really didn't know any other way. And honestly, I didn't feel that happiness was even available for me. So I continued living my life that way. And one turning point came in 2017. My boyfriend broke up with me, and then shortly thereafter, my dad passed away. And I was 37 years old, and I had spent every single one of those years, running away from my feelings or trying to suppress them, basically doing anything I
Mhm.
could not to feel them. But I was in such profound grief that it was impossible not to feel them. But I didn't have the tools to deal with it. So I basically, because that was the beginning of 2017. So the rest of the year, I felt like shit. I felt like a zombie. And that was it. I didn't do anything about it, except at the beginning of 2018, I decided I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I was like, okay, I want to make some changes in my life. But instead of looking inside of myself and figuring out what my patterns were and working on that,
Mhm.
I was living in Chicago and I decided I want to move to Hawaii. So it was well intentioned in the sense that I wanted to make changes in my life and I was proactively taking action on that. But it wasn't well intentioned in that I was still searching for things outside of myself to be the thing that made me feel better. So you can't move away from your problems. So I moved here and I still had all the exact same problems. But not only that, I developed a whole new host of problems. So, for example, this was 2018. It was before remote work was the trendy thing to
Mhm.
do. But my job was very generous and they allowed me to move here and keep my job. But right when I moved, there was this huge management shakeup at work that threatened my role. So the first year that I lived here, I lived in constant fear of losing my job. And again, remote
Mhm.
work was not trendy. So I felt like at a lack of resources and opportunities for jobs and income. So
Mhm.
that was very scary. And then I also had a really hard time making friends, which is something I had never dealt with before in Chicago. So it was so lonely and isolating to have struggle making friends and not really having a social network here while being thousands of miles away from anyone else that I knew. And the last major thing that happened right when I moved here was that when I moved to prove how dedicated and all in I was on my decision, I bought a new condo. But then a month after I closed on my condo, a shared pipe in the building backflowed into my bathroom sink, and I wasn't home. So my entire condo flooded. So all of this was like right off the bat. And
Yeah,
again, this
one
was
right after another.
yeah, and this is 2018. So like the next 2 years, it was just like thing after thing after thing. Like my
Mhm.
grandma died. I did make some new friends, but then they ended up being toxic. It was just everything was a struggle. And because I was reaching for the things outside of myself to make me feel better, and everything outside of myself was falling apart, my internal world, therefore, was unraveling. And then COVID happened, so I don't think I have to describe
No.
how that exacerbated the situation.
Yeah.
But then the straw that broke the camel's back was the end of a relationship during COVID. And I just had this moment where it's like, I cannot take this anymore, which I think we all have those moments because that was not the first time I had felt that way. But the difference between all the other
Happened to me
times,
too.
yeah. And this time is I just had this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness because it's like nothing has been going well. And I did not see any hope for the future because it's like, and I was so unhappy and basically at this point miserable. And I was tired of feeling that way. And I didn't see hope for anything else being available for me. So I intentionally overdosed on my anxiety medication because I didn't want to be here. And I spent a day and a half unconscious in my bathroom, a day and a half
Oh.
unconscious in the hospital. I was released from the hospital. I came home and I called a friend. I told her everything that happened. And I ended with, I can't believe I didn't die. And her response was, it's not your time. And it was so profound and it sent a cold chill down my body.
I'm
And
getting one right now.
yeah, so that was my turning point because when I was released from the hospital, I was kind of at this crossroads because I felt worse than I did before I took the pills. So I was like, I don't want to be here. Why am I here? But then
So
when she
you
said
were
that,
legitimately upset that you
yeah,
weren't successful with the attempt.
because the emotional intensity was still there.
Hmm.
But on top of that, physically I felt like shit because I was still really high from the pills that I had taken 3 days later. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. I was basically unconscious for 3 days. So it's
Hmm.
like I had like I'm coming out of this coma. Matt, have you ever like slept for like 12 hours straight and then you wake
Yeah.
up and you just feel like shit? So
Yeah.
it's like that times a
You get
hundred.
like too much
Um,
sleep almost.
yeah.
Yeah.
So So I felt even worse than I did. So yeah, I remember being really angry. And then when they let me go from the hospital, it was COVID. So they put all my, like my purse and stuff were in plastic bags. So I was blacked out for most of the hospital visit, but all I remember is all of a sudden I'm standing on the curb. I was barefoot. My shoes were in the plastic bags. I was barefoot. I'm holding plastic bags and I was just standing on the curb. And I was like, they basically just kicked me out on the street. And I just remember I was so pissed because it's like, I don't even want to be here. And now they're rubbing salt in my wounds by just like treating me like a bum, like
Mhm.
just go out on the street and survive. So I was just so insulted and pissed off. And
Do you,
yeah, so I did not feel good.
because
So
I
I'm so
know,
glad my friend said that to me.
I know because you think suicide attempts, like that's rock bottom. And you say, and everybody says that's a cry for help. It's a cry for help. But you legitimately like were done. And when they
Yeah.
told you that, for you to be like, I can't believe I didn't die, that emotionally, I can't even imagine the place you were in. And then, like you said, they basically just threw you out in the street without any,
Yeah.
I can't, you must have felt so alone and lost.
Well, and there's another layer to the story. So I actually I came out of consciousness when I was admitted to the hospital. So
Hmm.
I took the pills on a Friday afternoon, and it was morning when I was admitted to the hospital. So I thought it was Saturday morning.
Hmm.
So when I was released from the hospital, and I knew I spent the night in the hospital. So when I was released from the hospital, I thought it was Sunday. So
Hmm.
again, they just kicked me out to the curb. So I'm already pissed off. I turned on my phone to order an Uber, and it was like blowing up with text, and it was confusing. So the friend that I called, the reason that I called her is because she had a workshop on Sunday afternoon that I was supposed to go to, but I didn't attend. And she was texting me. I thought it was Sunday. So she's texting me like, "Why didn't you come to the workshop? Are you okay?" And I was like, "What is she talking about? It's
Hmm.
the workshop's tonight."
Hmm.
And then I had other texts. Oh, I had a esthetician appointment, and on Monday, and she was texting me like, "You're late. You're never late. Are you okay?" And I'm like, "What is she talking about? Our appointment's tomorrow." So I ordered the Uber. So again, because I'm still really high, and I'm looking at my phone, and that's when I realized it was Monday. So I didn't know I was unconscious for a day and a half in the bathroom until I was released from the hospital. So then
Oh.
that would like added to the emotional intensity because I was like, holy shit, like this is worse than I thought.
Yeah, I have two questions for you about this because hindsight, thank goodness that you weren't successful with that. But at what point were you like you get home and you're trying to absorb all this and you realize it's not one day later, it's 2, 3 days later. So you've lost all this time. You're still here, you're mad, you're pissed off, about everything. Like, how long did it take you to get into a place where, because did you want to attempt it again?
I probably would have because I was just like, yeah, I don't know how I would have because I remember this is such a longer story. There were moments of consciousness in the hospital because I started out in the emergency room. They discharged me from the emergency room, but they admitted me to the psych ward. So I spent the night in the psych
Mm.
ward, which
The 24-hour thing they do. Yeah.
I don't know, but it was so miserable because they just lock you. I wasn't locked in the room, but you're in a room. I didn't have my phone or any belongings. There's no TV. There's nothing. It basically feels like prison. Let's just put it this way. And there's truly crazy people in there. So they're like yelling and
Hmm.
screaming. Let's just say it wasn't good for my emotional state. So I was like, I need to get out of here. But the only way out was that in the morning, there's two doctors who do their rounds who, like, you have to do an interview with them and then they decide if you
Hmm.
get to leave. So they came to my room and I was like, just belligerent. I was like, please just let me go. Please just let me go. And they were rightfully so. They were concerned about letting me go because they were afraid that I was going to go home and harm myself. And I remember there were like two moments of sanity during that interview. One, I was begging for them. I was like, please just let me go home. And I was like crying. And it was like a good cop, bad cop scenario because there were two doctors and one was really nice and one was really mean. And the
Mm.
mean doctor was like, well, you certainly don't seem like you're in a good emotional state to go home. And it was like as if on cue, one of the like truly crazy patients like started throwing a fit or something in the background. And I was like, well, this certainly isn't a good environment for my emotional safety. And it like he that shut him up because it was actually like a very valid point. But
Yeah.
then the other moment of sanity was they were like, we're concerned you're gonna go home and kill yourself or try again. And I was like, well, I was like, first of all, I took all of the pills. I took an entire bottle. So I was like, I don't have any more. I was like, second of all, even if I did, I already know that doesn't work. So I wouldn't do that again. So I had already had that conversation. So I don't know what my strategy would have been, but I
Yeah.
probably would have been thinking about an alternate strategy. Because again, I felt even worse. And I just had that thought, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. But the friend, it was like such divine timing of how everything unraveled because the friend who was texting me about the workshop,
Yeah.
she was actually genuinely concerned about me because she's like, are you okay? Are you okay? Because that's out of character for me to not show up to
Yeah.
something and then not to be responding to her. So when I got discharged from the hospital, I was really ashamed about what happened. And this was a time in my life where I wanted to have this facade that I had my shit together and I didn't want anyone to see any of my
Yep.
flaws. So I didn't want to tell anyone what happened. So even with her, my game plan, when I called her, I was like, I'm just going to pretend. I don't know. I don't even know what I thought I was going to tell her. I thought I was going to make up some kind of convincing story to like
Hmm.
bypass everything that happened. But I was so, again, the emotional intensity was still there. So I broke down
Hmm.
crying when I was talking to her and I told her everything that happened. But I think everything happens for a reason because, again, she said it's not your time. And that's exactly what I needed to hear in that moment because I
Hmm.
was at that crossroads and I was like, okay, I think I have a purpose, so I'm actually going to get help. And her words is what caused me to go that direction.
Little angel on your shoulder. She is.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the help you got, but I want to go back really quick to when you were from Chicago and you were moving to Hawaii and you realized like you really started to make these big changes because I'm sure there's so many people at this crossroads. And as you went through, I think a lot of people go through when you start to do that, things can get worse before they get better. Did you find that were you communicating with friends and stuff like that that you wanted to make this change? And the reason why I'm asking that is because A, I wanted to know if how your support system was for that, and B, I lost people when I started making the changes that I needed to make, people kind of just disappear. So what was your experience with that?
Thank you for bringing this up because I don't think we talk about this enough,
No, we don't.
especially
And you know where I'm
so,
going with this.
yeah. And I've
Yeah.
had that experience in more than one place in life,
Hmm.
but I love how you specifically brought it up with the move from Chicago to Hawaii. Because just to be clear, I think people see me now and I'm adventurous and confident. So they're like, of course she moved from Chicago to Hawaii.
Hmm.
But let me tell you, that was a time in my life where I was not who I am now.
Hmm.
And it was absolutely the most terrifying thing I've ever done. And adding to that, when I told people, they were not supportive. It was like, well,
Hmm.
why would you want to do that? Even my mom was like, just rained on my parade. She
Yeah.
was like, and she made it all about her. She was like, well, it's really not a place I want to visit. And, and all this stuff. And so it made it so much more lonely and isolating.
Yes.
And again, because I wasn't confident, I started second guessing myself. It's like, should I really be doing this? And as I mentioned, my job let me move here and work remote. there were a lot of people at my job who got really jealous. They were like, well, how did you get to do that?
Mm.
It's like, well, I asked, you know what I mean? Like that's available to anybody.
Yeah.
But they were like looking at it as like I had some special privilege. And it's like, no,
Mhm.
I literally just asked my manager and he said yes. So
Yeah.
but like, so I got like some backlash from people at work who I could tell were jealous. So I didn't have any support at all.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, so I'm already like in this energy of like, am I doing the right thing? I'm scared. And then all these other things start happening. So the energy from the beginning wasn't great.
And this is one of the layers that I talk about a lot because when you go through life and you're at this crossroads, and I'll probably be at another crossroads in my life,
Yeah.
but you almost you're it's so isolating, and it's like you're alone on an island all by yourself. You
Which
literally
I was literally.
you're still on that island, but you're not alone now. But and how do you find now, like because you've gone through the door, and I want to talk about your book and all that too.
Yeah.
How do you feel now, like you contribute to the people you have in your life?
Well, so it really started, that was like the beginning of my healing
Yeah.
journey. But I always say I didn't start my healing journey in earnest until after my attempt. And I
Mhm.
actually invested
Right.
in myself and hired a coach. And because the difference is before, even though it was well intentioned, again, it was like all the things outside of myself. Like
Mhm.
I wanted the thing to make me feel better.
Mhm.
Whereas with a coach, I learned I'm the thing that makes me feel better.
Mhm.
So that's why I say my healing journey in earnest. But it's definitely happened in other situations. And it's not easy to even lose friends. I don't think we talk about friendship breakups enough because
Right.
losing a friend can sometimes be just as hard as a romantic relationship. Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a very difficult part of growth. However, in any friend that I've lost, that space has been filled with someone else who's a way better fit for who
Yeah.
I am in that moment.
It
So,
opens up room
yes.
for, yeah.
And so that's the main reason I've that I continue to grow because I think that's a big reason why people are afraid to change is because they're like, oh, I may lose people. And the truth is you probably will. And
Yes.
I think people are afraid of that, but like yeah, it just opens up opportunities
Mhm.
and like there's so much more on the other side. You just have to get through it. And for
Yeah.
me, what helps me is like, okay, this sucks and I will grieve it, but it's just opening the door for someone else who is better aligned for where I'm at in my journey right now.
So when you started, you reached out for help, you hired a coach.
Yes.
You didn't go through traditional therapy, right?
Well, I had tried traditional
Yeah,
therapy
me too.
before and it hadn't worked. And so, and when it didn't work before, I was just like, well, just not going to try anything else.
Hmm.
So, but now I was like, okay, I need help. And I was being serious about it. And the coach that I hired, so it's funny, again, I think it's divine timing. I almost said it's a coincidence, but I had actually met him at a healing intensive, and he's a men's dating coach.
Okay.
But I met him at this intensive. We were connected on Instagram, but he doesn't teach men, what is it called? Like pickup artist techniques,
Yeah.
which are actually very manipulative.
Yeah.
What he does, he teaches men to be the best versions of
Yeah.
themselves so that they attract good
Yeah.
partners.
Yes.
So the themes that he would speak to about being authentic and this is what true confidence really is, like the things that he spoke of really spoke to me.
Hmm.
And I had actually considered hiring him as a coach, but before my attempt, I was like, I just felt ridiculous because I'm like, he's a men's dating coach. Like, I felt
Yeah.
ridiculous reaching out to him. But when you hit rock bottom, you're kind of in this mentality of like, you have nothing to lose. So I was kind of like, I really don't care if I look like an idiot reaching out to him, but I need help and I want his help. So I'm reaching out to him.
Something your
Yeah.
gut was telling you, what something and was resonating with you, like you just knew.
Yeah, so I'm like, I can't ignore this calling,
Yeah.
especially because he had been calling to me. And
Right.
again, like just how I had already met him and I felt like I trusted him. So I
Yeah.
didn't have to like develop that relationship. It was already there. It was just a matter of me reaching out to him.
That's amazing. And the fact that you had already known him, and you just got to go with your gut on these
I
things.
know. And that's why, because like a huge part of my coaching program is intuition for
Yes.
that reason. Because if I would have been listening to my intuition before, I would have hired him early on and wouldn't have got to
You
rock
weren't
bottom.
ready. You
Yeah.
weren't ready. I mean, you have to trust the universe and and
Yeah.
things like that. So when did running in slippers come into the picture? And I told you I love the name. I mean, I'm in my slipper. If I'm home, I'm in my slippers. I just love it. And so explain how this came into the mix of everything.
Yeah. First, I'll explain the title because I think I forget to do that a lot
Yeah,
and I
it's
just go right into it. But, and actually, I have a copy here because I actually had another podcast interview
oh great.
earlier, and she was like, "Do you have a copy you can show us?"
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to leave on vacation tomorrow, and I'm going to Spain and Morocco, so I grabbed two copies to pack. So I actually had a copy like right next to me.
Oh
But
great.
this is so coincidentally, I have a copy here. So I live in Hawaii, and flip-flops are called slippers. So it
Yep.
actually means running in flip-flops. The story about how I came up with the title is the introduction of the book, so I won't give that away. But basically, running in flip-flops or running in slippers, it's a metaphor for life because it can be adventurous, playful, and fun, but
Mhm.
it can also be dangerous, scary, and painful. But running in slippers, it covers like a 5 year train wreck period of my life, which includes my dad dying, my attempt, and all of that. And it's really vulnerable. And the reason I wrote it that way is because I feel like on social media, it's all filtered and edited. Even in real life, we put on our happy face and pretend everything is fine. And the entire goal of the book is to connect through vulnerability. And the idea came about in 2017 after my dad died because I was in this profound period of grief. But we live in a just get over it society. So after a few months, people just expected me to be over it. And I was not even close to being over it.
Yeah.
But because I was used to, putting on a happy face and pretending everything was fine, that's what I did. However, the difference was there was such a disconnect between what I was portraying and how I was feeling. And then I would go on Instagram and everyone has their highlight reels. And even in real life, like everyone pretends like everything's fine.
Yeah.
And so it just bothered me more during this period because there was such a disconnect. And I was like, I can't be the only one struggling. I
Mhm.
felt like there have to, because life is hard, right? I was like, there have to be more people struggling. Why aren't we talking about it? So I had the idea in 2017, but again, like I was too afraid of allowing myself to be seen. I'm like, it's too vulnerable. I couldn't ever
Yeah.
do that. So I had no intention of ever, and I had written like little pieces, but I had no intention of fully writing it and publishing it until, so my friend made that comment, it's not your time. So it made me think, and I was like, okay, because she's right. I could have died. I don't think it was my time. But then I was like, okay, I have a purpose, but what is that purpose? I had no idea.
Mhm.
And so on my very first call with my coach, he was like, if you could do anything and didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? And the first thing that came to my mind was the book. So I was like, oh, I have this idea for a book. It's really vulnerable because I don't feel like we're talking about the shitty things that happen in my life, in our lives. And I want to go on these book tours so that there's in-person events that are
Yeah.
safe places for people to
Mhm.
actually talk about real life and what's actually happening in our lives. And when I finished, he was like, did you notice how lit up you just got when you were talking about that? And I did notice my state change. So I was like, maybe this is my purpose.
Yeah.
And especially since, because I started from rock bottom when I hired him. So I knew it was going to be a process to actually heal. So to actually like anchor in my sense of purpose, I'm like, I'm just going to start writing the book. I don't have to finish it. That's like the
Yeah.
story I was telling myself. But the
Well,
more I started writing it, the more I felt like it was my purpose. So then it felt
yeah.
ridiculous not to publish it.
Did you? So it had to have been writing it because I know you had no expectations.
Yeah.
What it had to have been very therapeutic for you to write it. But it had to have had a lot of hard moments too.
Yeah, people ask me that all the time. I think I'm getting to a place where, in hindsight, I can say that it was, but it didn't seem that way for a long time
Mhm.
because when you write your own book, you have to read your own book a gazillion times through the writing and editing
Yeah.
process. So just continue, like, again, like my darkest moments are in this book. The worst mistakes I've ever made are in this book. So it's really hard to read that. And also, even in the early stages of my healing journey, it was really hard to see just how much I truly did hate myself.
Hmm.
So, and even that like makes me want to cry.
It makes
So
me
like,
want to cry. Yeah.
so at the time it felt like it was just re-traumatizing, especially I recorded the audiobook too, and there's something so powerful about speaking things out loud. So there were parts I would just break down crying, which I didn't even expect because again, I had read my own book a gazillion times. There were a few parts where I would always cry, but there were so many parts when I was reading the audiobook, I would just have like a breakdown and like couldn't record
Yeah.
anymore. And I was actually really depressed for 3 months after I recorded the audiobook because it was just so much emotionally.
It was a
But that
lot.
being
Yeah.
but that being said, I think in at the end it was very healing because you have to feel your feelings to go through them. And so I had to feel all that until the emotional intensity wasn't even there anymore. Like I still feel a certain way, but it's like I don't break down crying about it anymore.
Are you at a place now where you can look at yourself and be like, I cannot believe that what I've been through, and I can't believe I actually wrote a book and I'm a published author now, and I am like a badass. Can you look at yourself
Oh,
and say that?
I should. I can't say that I do. I
Get off this when we are done. You're gonna go look in the mirror and tell yourself what a badass you are.
Thank you. Yes, I needed that. Thank you for hyping me up. I did need that. No, but I do. There's definitely been identity shifts to the point where some days I wake up and it's like, I don't even know who I am anymore, especially like when talking about old versions of myself. Because even when I was describing like who I was in 2018 when I moved to Hawaii, there's like part of me that remembers it, but there's another part of me like, no, like you're confident. It wasn't that scary. You know what I mean? So it's sometimes it's even hard to remember
Yeah.
how I was in those old versions of myself because I'm such a different person.
Yeah, I know you look back and you're like, who was that girl? You
I
know?
know. I remember
It's
I was terrified about because I had three oversized suitcases, and my friend Joe dropped me off at O'Hare in Chicago, and he helped me with my suitcases. But I was like, I started crying because I was like, oh my God, who's gonna help me when I'm in Honolulu? And he was like, just don't worry about it until you get there. And I
yeah.
remember it ended up being okay, but I just remember being so worried about that, and that is something that wouldn't even be a blip on my radar now.
Yeah, well, and the whole unknown. I mean,
Yeah.
you've done so much, and I love though that you chose to just up and leave, scared out of your wits, move to Hawaii, but you're still there. Like you've made it your home now,
Yes.
and I love that it's as much as you had to take like 10 steps backwards to get where you are now. Like, I want people to know that when you start like admitting to yourself, like things need to change, I need to make changes, I have to change my thought process, there will be uh, setbacks.
Oh,
It could
yeah.
be one step, it could be 10, but you'll also take that huge leap forward. So don't be, everything's fear based. So don't be afraid. Just, go for it.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out because I used to listen to Tony Robbins a lot, and
Oh, yeah.
he has amazing messages. I'm not trying to invalidate anything he says. And again, part of it was my interpretation at the time because
Hmm.
he would always say, like, if you take that leap of courage, if you do this or you do that, life will reward you.
Right.
So when I moved to Hawaii, I was like expecting the rewards immediately, but instead I had all these setbacks, but they were just setting me up for the reward.
Yeah. It sounds like the coach you hired, what was his name?
His name's Pablo, Pablo
Oh, it,
Rosario. He's a men's and dating coach.
okay. It sounds like that was the one of the pivotal moments for you hiring him.
He changed my life. And
Yeah.
I would actually go as far as to say he saved my life because again,
Have you
I
told him
life
that?
oh yeah,
Oh,
like we
yeah.
still talk, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
I should probably tell him again. He probably because again, just like I forget that I'm a badass, he
Yeah.
probably forgets that he
Well,
contributed
life.
to
I
saving
mean,
my
you
life.
can't,
Yeah.
yeah, life happens. When did your book get published?
2022.
Okay, 2022. So, and is it on Amazon? Can you buy it on Amazon?
Yes, the paperback and Kindle and Audible are on Amazon, but the audiobook is available wherever you get audiobooks. So
Yeah.
Spotify,
Okay.
Apple, I don't even know all the outlets anymore.
Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss that while I was talking to you because I think people are going to want to, I think this book sounds like that might be the first step for somebody who's struggling, to read this, to know you're not alone, but you can provide some, information for them where you can relate but also provide that hope.
Yeah, and also because I talk to women who are self-aware and they're like, okay, I struggle with people pleasing, I struggle with this, I struggle with that.
Mhm.
But there was a place in my life, and when I wrote my book, it was from hindsight because I had already started my healing journey, but I was trying to write it from my point of view at that time. So,
Yeah.
meaning I was very much a people pleaser, but I had heard that term, but I myself didn't really identify with it.
Hmm.
Um, so if you're not sure of what, like maybe just you have this general feeling of unhappiness and unfulfillment, that's a first sign. But then your second step may be like, well, I don't know what the issue is. Yeah, if you read my book, if you
Hmm.
resonate with anything, then you could probably start to pinpoint patterns and things and identify those in yourself. And even as a coach, sometimes I struggle with using words like people pleaser or whatever,
Yeah.
because I think some people, and because I was this person at some point, I didn't even resonate with that term, even though I was very much a people pleaser.
Yeah, and I think we all have people pleaser tendencies. We all have narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah.
We're human. We're all human. So, what do you find with coaching women? And I want to talk about what your program, I don't know if you call it program, but what your program is when you are coaching women. But what do you find are some of the biggest struggles with women? Is there a big difference with generations, whether it's 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? Do you find a big difference in that?
Mm, kind of. I've never worked with the young, like I think it's called Gen Z now. I haven't worked with any Gen Zs. There's definitely differences between millennials and Gen X. I think they're all basically the same though. Oh, I think women tend to give away their power in relationships a lot and base their worth on what that other person thinks of them. That's a huge
Yeah.
difference. A biggest difference in generations, I think Gen X puts more of their worth in their job or their career, where I don't think millennials do as much as that. But there
Mhm.
definitely is still the same theme of putting your energy in something outside of yourself or your worth.
Yeah, there's been studies done where, because we all say, oh, millennials, but there's been studies, and like my grandparents said it about my generation, same type of thing, but that millennials have the toughest job with society right now because they're dealing with all the pressure from social media. You know,
Hmm.
they're dealing with all this pressure from influencers and not that I think there's a lot of amazing influencers out there, but there's so much pressure because everything is on the forefront. Like you said, everyone's putting these great reels of these wonderful lives they live, and it's making people almost feel like their lives are less watching
Yeah.
this, and it's just a facade. We're all struggling.
It's so true. Like every single person you see on Instagram, there's something else going on. I've done a lot
Nobody
of,
posts when they're on the bathroom floor crying their eyes out and laying there, a mess. Nobody posts that stuff. I mean,
as
I
a
would,
matter of,
but
no,
you
actually, some
know,
people do. Some people do that, but it's actually more performative than like
yeah,
real life.
and
But
authentic, yeah,
all of my in-person workshops, we do this exercise at the end. It's called Instagram versus reality. So everyone shows a
Mhm.
picture that it doesn't even necessarily have to be on Instagram, but a picture that you've somehow publicly shown, whether it's on Instagram or something else, where you're seemingly happy, and then tell the backstory of what was really going on. And it is so powerful
Yeah,
because you see the most amazing pictures, and then people will be going on and on about, like, oh, I hated my life, or I had a really bad
yeah.
drinking problem, and I was so miserable, and all the stories. And it's like you never would have known that from looking at their picture. And this is going
Wow.
on all of the time.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Like I've never thought of it like that to look back. I'm going to do that and look back at some of my pictures because I know I do that and behind the scenes I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago who was on the show and she was saying just because I look good and I look like I'm together, I'm like a mess inside. I'm an absolute like basket case inside and
Yeah.
I know there's no look to being, people are all struggling.
Well, and even I try to be as real as possible on my Instagram, but for
Yeah.
example, because I don't use filters or edits or anything, and
I
I
don't
feel
even know
like I
how to use filters. I'm
same,
trying to
same.
learn. I am trying to learn though, because I know a lot of them are fun. So I'm like playing around with it a little bit, but I have no idea. I end up looking like a clown.
But when I first moved here, because you have the friends you may only talk to once a year. There were several people when I first moved here, they thought I had retired because I was only posting pictures of me like hiking or surfing or whatever.
Yeah.
Because, like, at the time I was working in corporate America, working in spreadsheets all day. So it's like, in my mind, I'm like, why would I post a picture of me working? Because that's boring. But it made me realize, like, I still am filtering in some aspect because I was choosing not
Mm.
to share that. So it's just interesting.
What would you say to somebody that's listening right now? Because we're all in different stages of our journeys and I think the biggest, like I said, it's everything's fear driven, and
Yeah.
I think and like for me, a lot of it was confidence, like lack of confidence. Like I put out that I had all this confidence, but I really didn't. I was completely like the opposite. But people that are like even thinking about starting to make some changes, I mean, I think first, good job that you're thinking about it. That's the first step. But,
Yeah.
you know, um, like how would you help guide them to like get to a place where they can really start, getting to the other side?
With most people, I recommend getting professional help. Traditional therapy never worked for me. That does not mean it's not effective.
Yep.
But there are so many modalities. So if traditional therapy hasn't worked for you, there's coaches, like there's
Yeah.
so many resources these days.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend getting help because sometimes you just need someone outside of yourself to point out the patterns. Because again, even once I started to become more self-aware, I don't recall, but I still don't think I considered myself or identified with being a people pleaser.
Hmm.
But once I identified with that, and again, you have to face some harsh truths and healing. But
Yes.
once I identified with that and could see the patterns because someone else pointed it out to me, that's the first step in changing those behaviors, which in turn change your internal beliefs. Because that was the issue, right? Like my internal belief was that I didn't deserve to be loved. So my behaviors reflected that. Therefore,
Mhm.
my experiences reflected that. So by, working on because you can't just change your beliefs. Like there probably are ways, but that's going to be a long struggle journey. But
Mhm.
when you actively, like for instance, what was helpful for me for working with a coach versus working with a therapist. With a therapist, you just talk for an hour, and then I didn't really feel like I had the tools to really
Yeah.
deal with real life once I left the office. But with my coach, I actually had homework to implement. So that's
Mhm.
what got me in a consistent practice of practicing behaviors like setting boundaries. And he actually called it being a functional adult because a lot of our behavior patterns, and it sounded ridiculous to me at first because again, that was a harsh reality. Like, oh my God, I don't know how to be an adult because my survival strategies are based on how I acted as a child and a teenager.
Yeah.
But it really is that simple. You just have to learn the behaviors of being a functional adult. And over time, that actually changes your beliefs because by having strong boundaries, I started to respect myself. By developing my intuition and trusting myself, I developed that self respect. And over time, and again, it was a process, but it was so worth it because over time, my internal beliefs started matching my behaviors. And then my behaviors weren't homework or something that I intentionally had to think about doing. It just, now that it's just an automatic subconscious behavior that I do because my beliefs are already there.
I love that you're saying this because part of the healing is to really dig deep and look at those sides of us that we maybe never knew we had,
Yeah.
which will come out. These will come out. And it can be scary to face, like maybe sides of yourself that could be like yucky. And you're like, I can't believe I was like that. Like we've all, have that in us. However, I love that you're saying how really looking deep into those, your coach helped you. What it did is the opposite. It helps you build that confidence.
Yeah, because we did a lot of shadow work together, which is why I do a lot of shadow work with my clients because yeah, trust me, it does not feel good when you like look at some of the things that you've been doing your entire life. But for example, my issue was that I like, and I hate saying this out loud, but it was true. I hated myself.
Mhm.
But by doing my shadow work is because I hated, like, first of all, I hated that I was anxious, or I hated that I always felt sad, or I had so many feelings. But I learned to embrace that as part of who I was. And I
Mhm.
actually made friends with like the seemingly negative parts of myself. And again, those behaviors caused me to actually have this belief that I do deserve to be loved. You don't have to be perfect to be loved.
Yeah. I love
So
that you
like
said
there's
that
so
you
much in
made
that
friends with that side of yourself. Can
because
you
I always used to push it away.
Yeah. Can you explain real quick for people that don't might not know what shadow work is?
Yeah, what's a good succinct way? Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, one of the exercises that he did with me that I do with my clients, because there's different things you can do, but it's basically you map out how you feel at that time, what your quote unquote good qualities are, and what
Mhm.
your quote unquote bad qualities are. Oh, I love dogs.
That's my sunny bunny. He wants to eat. He can wait. But anyway, so you map
um,
out.
your seemingly good and bad qualities, and then you like it was basically like a Venn diagram, and then you just put them together in the middle because they're all part of who you are. And actually, what I've done is like reframe the seemingly bad things. Like, for instance, I used to label anxiety as bad, but
Mhm.
I made friends with my anxiety. And now I look at the hypervigilance as a good thing because that's how I developed my intuition and my ability to read people beyond their words because the hypervigilance of the anxiety gave me that ability. So there's actually superpowers in the things that you may not have used to like about yourself. So that is one aspect of shadow work is basically looking at, and I hate even saying this because now on the other side, it's like I don't even want to call them dark sides or negative traits
Yeah.
because it's all positive. So it's hard to explain.
I'm just writing this down because superpowers when you're with your anxiety and it built your intuition.
Yes, because that hypervigilance gets
Yeah.
you tuned into people's body language and energy. So it
Yeah.
actually was helpful to me. Although I did ignore my intuition for most of my life. But once I realized that that was my superpower, I could just plug right back in.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm starting to do shadow work because I think, and this is one thing I want to tell people, and then I want you to talk about shine from the inside. But I just want to let people know that like when you start doing work on yourself, and I think you could let me know if your clients feel this way, but I can only speak for myself. The more you do, the more you want to do. It's
Yes.
almost like an addiction. So that's why I'm like, oh, I'm doing shadow work and I am going all in. Like I want it, like I crave it now. So and that's the beauty of, really getting like that, getting to know yourself,
Yeah, that's
you
a really
know?
good way to describe it because, yeah, the initial getting into it doesn't feel good at all. But then when
Right.
you're like, but it opens your eyes to, again, like your patterns, like, oh shit, I've been living this way for so long and it
Yeah.
didn't have to be a struggle. It didn't have to be that bad. So it's like, oh, now I can change it. So once you realize
Yeah.
you have more accountability over your life than you really do, it's actually builds your confidence and it's motivating to keep going.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it is scary, but I want anybody that's listening to be excited about diving in because, as Angie said, you will soon identify what your superpowers are
Yeah.
and be excited about that part of it and what you have to do to get there. Because it's amazing. Like you said, now your intuition, like I thought my intuition was strong before. Now it's like a whole nother level.
Which is huge if you do have low self-worth. Because I used to always doubt myself. Like, for instance, when I said, when no one supported me when I moved to
Yeah.
Hawaii, I was like, am I making the wrong decision? Blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Whereas now it's like, I don't question my decisions.
Yeah.
Even if things don't seem like they're working out, I still am firm on my decision because this is probably happening for a reason.
Trust the journey.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your workshop. So
Um,
everybody
my
can,
my workshop or the coaching program?
I'm sorry, the
Is it?
coaching program.
Oh,
Yeah. Or do you have both?
well, I'm starting. I'll talk about the coaching program
Okay.
first, but I am starting a monthly workshop.
Okay.
My coaching program is called Shine from the Inside, and it's based on this concept we're all born with a light inside of us. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be fixed. Your light has just been dimmed, and you
Yeah.
just again, sometimes you just need someone outside of yourself to help you turn it back on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the thing that makes you feel better. I'm just the person that teaches you how to relight it, and then you're free to go on your own. But basically, again, I help high achieving women stop chasing and performing for love and approval outside of themselves because everything you need is within you. And so basically, we just work on whatever, because people struggle with different things. A lot of people do struggle with people pleasing. I've had a lot of women come to me because they're giving their worth away in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women struggle with boundaries because, especially women with children, because they think they have to give to their kids first.
Yeah.
But it's really the opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're not giving to yourself first, then you're just, and the example I always give, because I don't have kids myself, but I have a mom, and my mom always gave outside of herself first. So
Mm-hmm.
she was constantly, chronically angry. And that honestly is all I remember about my childhood, how angry and reactive my mom was. So to be a good role model for your kids, it actually helps to protect your time and energy and show up in a healthy way.
And you do these in person and virtually, right?
Okay, so the coaching I've only done virtually. I'm not opposed to taking clients locally and doing them in person. I am
Right.
going to start doing monthly workshops. It's called Unshakable You. It's about the 3 keys to inner confidence that you can't take away because a lot of people think that confidence is like how you dress or how you
Yeah.
look, and which you can derive confidence that way, but the problem is it's still seeking the external validation. But true confidence is rooted in who you are as a person,
Yeah.
and nobody can take that away from you. So I'm going to start doing monthly workshops for Unshakable You, and those are virtual, so they're available to anyone.
Oh, that's amazing. I feel you're mentioning confidence, and you got me thinking because I think you're right. It's not what's on the outside. I think it's the energy that you're projecting.
Well, and I think everyone's version of confidence is different. As long as
Mhm.
it's internal, you're on the right path. But
Yeah.
for me, it came from this sense of, because I used to feel like my emotions were so overwhelming and I couldn't handle it, or like this life experience was so overwhelming and I couldn't
Yeah.
handle it. But now for me, confidence is trusting that I can figure shit out no matter what, you
Yes. You're
know?
like, I've got this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think everyone's version of confidence is different, but again, like that's my internal validation. Like I trust myself and I know I can figure it
Yeah.
out.
So I will share the links, but tell everybody how they can find you.
So my website is runninginslippers.com. So there's obviously information about where to buy my book. Again, it's available Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook, but it's also available on audiobook wherever audiobooks are sold. And I am the narrator. I know that's important for audiobook
Yeah.
listeners. And there's also information on my coaching program. Again, it's called Shine from the Inside. And I do offer a free, I call it a glow up session
Mhm.
for new clients. It's a 60-minute call and we can work on whatever you're struggling with. And again, if you're not even sure what you're struggling with, I
Yeah.
am there to talk with you. And at the end, I can give you recommendations going forward because I am not for everyone. My coaching program is not for everyone, but I know other coaches, I have other resources. This
Yeah.
is a place for you to get help because, again, I feel like I used to be at a point where it's like I didn't even know what I needed or where to start. So sometimes you just need to have that conversation. And I am more than happy to have that conversation with you.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'll of course share it all on the links when I post this and everything. But Angie, I have been so I mean, we first talked in August and
Yeah.
I have been so looking forward to this and you know, you had me at running in slippers. So I think I told you that when we first
Yeah.
talked and everything. Thank you so much. Like you made I wrote down a ton. You gave me a lot of aha moments myself that's got me thinking. So I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Oh,
So
good.
thank you so much and have a wonderful and safe trip. And I can't wait to see your pictures and everything that you post.
Oh, yes, and I will be posting.
Yes,
Thank
that
you
would
so
be
much for having
awesome.
me.
Thank you. The content on this podcast revolves around personal life experiences and is meant to serve as a learning tool. I am not a certified therapist or medical expert. This podcast doesn't offer medical, psychological, or professional advice. If you're curious about your mental or physical well being, feel free to reach out to a licensed healthcare professional for assistance.